What an honor to talk to this guy, Chris Squire, whether it's with Yes or any of his solo projects or his new project we're going to be talking about. It gives you goosebumps. The kind of music this man's responsible for. Chris Squire, great to have you on the Allan Handelman Show.
Nice to be here, Alan. And don't get too goosebumpy.
Well, yeah, the goosebumps I'm talking about are come from music that just overwhelms you. You know, and it's kind of like, it's a story I can tell you. A song that I was hooked on, an early song, was Perpetual Change from your first album, I believe.
Yeah, and didn't that turn out to be a good prophecy?
Isn't that the truth? Looking at the lyrics alone. But the sound of that. In fact, I blew out my speakers at the very 50 seconds at the end, maybe a minute at the end when it was whatever it was. It was such good quality. I would turn it up. And
right.
That's the kind of goosebumps I'm talking about.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for the compliment.
The new project, Squacket.
Yeah.
I hope I'm pronouncing that right, between Steve Hackett. So talk about from what I understand, this was something where you're friends with Steve Hackett. You've worked with him, guitarist from Genesis. So how, between everything going on, did this project come about?
Well, I can give you a brief history. I was in London in 2006, and I was over there concentrating on trying to write new material. And in the middle of that, I had an idea that I wanted to make an album of some of my favorite Christmas carols from when I was a kid that I remembered. Some of them well known, some of them a bit obscure. And so that became the Chris Squire's Swiss Squire album. And I recorded it with Jeremy Stacey on drums and a good friend, keyboard player friend of mine, Gerard Johnson, and put it all together. And I needed a guitar player, or actually, originally the idea was to have, guest guitar players on different tracks. And I'd spoken with Brian May and Jeff Beck about doing a track, and when I'd run into them at award functions or whatever, and they, oh yeah, sure, we'll do that. Of course, when it came to it, everyone was busy doing other things. And so Jeremy, the drummer, said to me, have you tried Steve Hackett? And I said, well, no, it's never really occurred to me. What's he doing these days? Because I hadn't really had any contact with him. I met him once in Brazil in the 80s for a quick hi, how are you, at one of those Rio festivals. And apart from that, I really hadn't known his recent history at all. So I gave him a call and I said, Steve, my friend Jeremy recommends you'd be great to play on this. And he said, yeah, I've got some time, send me a couple of tracks. And I did, and he did such a great job that, he ended up playing the guitar on the whole album, and he really did a great job. So I then owed him, a bunch of favors, and I said, well, Steve, anything that you have that you need me to play bass on or sing harmonies on or whatever? And he said, yeah, that's a good way of reciprocating the favor. So I went over and started working with him on his material that I don't know where it was destined for at the time. But the more and more we worked together, the more we realized that, we might be headed towards making a record together because we were just working on this tune and that tune, and he gave me a demo of ideas he had, and I told him which ones I liked, and so after a while, I realized that I wasn't just playing on stuff for him. We were sort of creating stuff in the process together, and then I brought in some of the music I'd been working on, and he played on that. And then towards the end of the album, the last couple of tracks, Tall Ships and A Life Within a Day, the album title, we pretty much wrote those organically together from the ground up, lyrics and melodies and music. And, we realized that we were working on an album together, and the reason Squacket came about as the name for it is because all the time we were doing that, we usually work, from lunchtime through into the evening, and then we go out for dinner somewhere. And my wife used to make a lot of the bookings, and they always, what name would you like that under? She used to say Squacket. And,
why not?
And so that's how the name came about, and how the project is now going to be released.
It's amazing to me because, when people say, well, they're working on a project, you expect to hear some great stuff. But I have to tell you, the production value, as I said, the fidelity, the audio, it was recorded as if this was a major project from Yes. It had all the elements of that fidelity. Was it recorded at your home studio?
Well, it wasn't mine. It was Steve. Has a studio facility in Richmond, London, where he lives, and we did quite a lot of the bass guitar stuff there, and then we'd also do some of the stuff in his living room, vocals and like other parts that we added on. But it was all done really with there's a third member of this project, really, Roger King, who has been Steve's right-hand man, I think, pretty much for a good 20 years. He's made albums with him as his keyboard player, kind of producer, and he has the same role on the Squacket project. And so any compliments for the sound should be directed at Roger King, because we pretty much left it to him to mix it. And,
very good.
Yeah.
Very good. You're going to hear lots of that music coming up in this conversation. But Yes is still around. Big tour starting this summer. Actually, it's you've just gotten, I think the tour in Europe is over. Now you're going to be starting in July for America.
We're starting in the U.S., yeah.
And this is, this is something you're probably sick of hearing about or people asking you about, but it's inevitable. John Anderson will not be with Yes on this tour and on this project, and talk about that. Get that out of the way.
Well, it's not much of a mystery anymore. During the years between 2004 and 2008, we took some time out, really, and that's one of the reasons why I went to London to live for a while. Is because John was having respiratory problems, and so we gave him a good amount of time to get over them, and we were set to do a tour in 2008 with John, and just before we were about to go into rehearsals for that tour, he really had a turn for the worse, and unfortunately, I think he was pretty close to death at the hospital, but they brought him back around, and and he's doing great now. But it was a tentative period, and we realized that as getting towards the end of 2008, that we'd probably have to bring somebody else in to take over the lead vocal role, as John's health, he wasn't up for it. So, and, of course, we didn't want to force him into doing anything drastic. So, so that's when Benoit David came in, and he did a great job for a couple of years, and then at the end of the European tour, in Christmas, end of last year, 2011, he just decided that he didn't really want to do it anymore, and he wanted to stay closer to home because he had some family concerns of his own,
sure,
et cetera, et cetera. So, so we made an agreement to, move on and find someone else. And the amazing thing is that we now are working with John Davison, who's out of L.A., and he is just fantastic. He is taken over the role, with full commitment, and is a great singer.
That's right.
And so we're I'm real happy that we're gonna be out there in the U.S. this summer. and bringing John Davison to the people, and I think the response will be positive.
Absolutely, yeah. And of course, down the road, you never know. John might be back.
Well,
But
yeah, I mean, I don't consider closing the door on the idea of doing something with John again. It's just that he himself has said that he couldn't commit to the kind of schedule it takes
sure.
to do a Yes tour.
And that stands to reason. And I
Yeah.
mean, for the project's sake, you guys are, to continue the project, you have to move on at some point.
Yeah, that's right. And keep bringing that Yes music to the fans.
Yeah. Will you guys, this is probably varies maybe from week to week, but would you do Perpetual Change coming on this upcoming tour?
I kind of we do pull it in and out every now and again, and I think when we were talking about changing up some of the songs for the summer tour, I think that was one of the suggestions. I can't remember what the response to it was.
Cool. Well, I'll be.
But I think Alan White suggested we do it again. So. But we're going to be doing some other things that we definitely know we're going to be putting in the summer tour. We're going to be bringing back Awaken from the Going for the One album, and that's going to be quite a radical change. We haven't done that song for quite a while. And then, but of course, the main focus of this tour is still to promote last year's Yes album, Fly From Here.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, Fly From Here, has the 23-minute-long suite of Fly From Here, and that's going to be the centerpiece of the Yes show.
It's going to be that's going to be a great show. I've always wanted to ask you this because I'm glad, first of all, there's a resurgence and interest in progressive rock, but I always wondered, did you get pressure? Back in the day, when your albums were coming out, you got plenty of airplay on progressive rock stations. They were right on top of it. Yours is no disgrace. I've seen All Good People, Roundabout. But when it came to top 40 radio, your songs were, I guess, considered way too long. Did you ever get pressure to maybe reduce the length of the songs?
Yeah, in the early days when Fragile came out, we were at the Atlantic Records offices in New York, and then, of course, one of the guys working there said, well, we've had an engineer do this edit, a Roundabout, and, of course, we all hated it because it cut out most of the song. But reluctantly, they persuaded us, look, let us run with this so that at the time, so we can get that played on AM radio. was the thing, because remember, back in 1971 when Fragile was released, FM radio was pretty much had just come out of the college kind of thing, and
right, it was called underground radio.
Yeah, underground, exactly. And one of the things that went along with that is that they were playing the 10-minute long songs and the 12-minute long songs. So so we didn't have any problem at FM, but in order to get more of a widespread audience at the time, you needed to get an AM cut, as they would say. And so there is that edit, the Roundabout, that famously did come out, and I guess did do a lot of good to spread the
It sure did. It sure did. I know people that for whatever reason that was about all the time they had to invest in music in their life, and that was about the perfect length, and they that's what they latched onto. I know they edited America. They made an edited version of that. Yeah. But it's interesting. Owner of a Lonely Heart was the first real, I guess, biggest hit, the first one that crossed over all formats of rock and roll. Yeah. And it was a little different. Give us some of the inspiration and feeling for that song.
Well, what happened then was that, Yes worked real hard at touring and making records in the 70s. But then it got to the end of the 70s, and we did the drama album, with Trevor Horn singing and Jeff Downs, who's our current keyboard player, are playing keyboards. And, of course, they were famously known as the Buggles. And so that was a bit of a change, because no one could quite understand why this band who'd recorded Video Killed the Radio Star was now part of Yes.
Yeah.
But actually it was a great marriage. And the drama album is still very respected, by prog rock fans. So, but then after that, Jeff and Steve went off to do the Asia project, and of course we remember that was very successful, Heat of the Moment, etc. And so Alan White and I were hanging out, and we did some stuff with Jimmy Page. We were working on the possible XYZ project, which was going to be, the XCS Zeppelin thing, and that didn't fly because Robert Plant was going to be involved in that, but it was all a little too early for him to think about a new project, because he was still pretty upset about the John Bonham's death. So so that kind of went on the back burner, and then the next thing was that Alan and I hooked up with Trevor Rabin, who came to my house in England, and we did some jamming and listened to some songs, and then Trevor came into the fold, and we started to work on the album, which was going to be under the name of Cinema, which was going to be the name of the band. And we started. So we had a budget from Atlantic, and we were working with Trevor Horn, not this time as a producer and not as a singer. And of course, Tony Kaye came back in from the early days of Yes, the keyboard player, and so that was Trevor and Alan and Tony Kaye and myself, and so we started making the album like that as a four-piece, and it was and then at a certain point the man from Atlantic Records came to me and said, this sounds real good, and have you thought about maybe getting John Anderson back? And I said, all right, well, I'll run it by John, see if he's interested. And of course he was, and then of course that got renamed as Yes again, and the Cinema label got dropped. And
very interesting.
That was the 90125 album, which of course was Yes's biggest selling record, as you say, and with Owner of Lonely Heart, which was a huge crossover hit. It was even number one in the black charts.
Yes.
So, of course, that was a new era for us. And, of course, Trevor Rabin brought in a different style of guitar playing anyway from what we've been used to. And he was more rocky and more poppy to an extent as well. So
the dynamics of all the music, that song in particular, it just made even a cheap stereo sound great because of the fidelity. And, it's one of the things I really, really look for and appreciate when I hear it in a band. And it seems to be harder and harder to get. But Yes music has always had that extra high-end frequency range. Is that to me is just amazing. That's something that you guys think about a lot.
Well, we try to work with the good engineers, and and of course the last album, Fly From Here, once again Trevor Horn was producing it. So it's always a pleasure to work with him.
Now on the new one, I want to talk about certain songs. When you start off with A Life Within a Day and the new Squacket CD that is out there. By the way, what is your website so people can have that ready to go if you have a website you want to give out?
You know what? I was just thinking today I've got to update that, but I'm ChrisSquire.com.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There you get all the information. Now, let me tell you, this, when you put it on, the first thing you're going to notice as you go from track to track, for those who have heard this, you've told me this, and this is what I've noticed, every song is a winner. Every song is great. And you kind of, the essence of the music kind of pays a silent tribute to Zeppelin and Simon and Garfunkel, and there's kind of that harmony you might hear with the Beach Boys or something like that, but it's kind of incorporated. Talk about that whole aspect.
Well, yeah, I mean, we started working together, Steve Hackett and I didn't actually know he was even a singer. And then when he started playing me demos of him singing, I said, well, you sing really well. I didn't know that. And then another bonus added to that was when we started singing together, and we realized that our voices sounded really good together. And once again, I give credit to Roger King for, like the kind of blend of the voices he managed to achieve and the echoes, etc. And so, as you say, when you listen to the album, there are elements of Simon and Garfunkel here and there, and even the Birds on one of the tracks. I think it sounds like a '60s Birds track, but there's definitely a history of our influences on this album.
The one that stands out as far as Zeppelin to me, a couple of them, but Storm Chaser, that's a rocker.
Yeah, that's kind of Zeppelin-esque. And A Life Within a Day too also has some of those elements.
Yes. So. That absolutely. Yeah. And one of my favorites. I have several favorite songs, but Aliens. I love the line. It's only us from the future.
Yeah.
I love that. A show, something that's always been intriguing to me is what's going on out there. Is there more to these UFO sightings than people just saying that it's misidentified planets? And the simple message that song reveals, I'd love you to give the inspiration and talk a little bit about that as we roll it.
Yeah, sure. Let me just say one thing before I go any further.
Sure.
I know I have another interview coming in 7 minutes, so if we're not done by then, if I could give you a call back and we could finish off.
That would be wonderful. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Go ahead. Obviously I have your number, so let's just go for another 5 minutes or something. And and then I'll give you a call back when I'm done with the other
Terrific.
interview.
That'll be great. Okay. So, Aliens.
Aliens is a song that I had brought into the project already finished, that I had written. And like you, for years, I've always thought, well, if the human race carries on and we don't blow ourselves up and we keep progressing, then of course in another 1,000 or 2,000 years we're going to have developed time travel. I mean, it just makes sense. Look how much we've developed in the last 100 years, So, and then I thought, well, yeah, so that really makes me think that maybe these, spaceships from the future are really just us from the future. And of course, in the future, we won't be eating the same way, or probably always be nutrient supplements, and we probably will have little spiddly bodies, big heads, And so I think it's a very plausible explanation for UFOs, that it's really just the human race coming back to revisit the past, and sometimes we see them.
And it's just a great song. Again, it kind of inspires a lot of thought and reflection, and you say, yeah, that makes sense, as the music kind of seeps in. Another song I like a lot, Can't Stop the Rain.
Oh, thank you. That's also another song I brought into the project.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that one, a little inspiration.
Well, that is a song that I wanted to kind of get that flavor. I know it might sound corny, but that kind of Burt Bacharach kind of writing that he used to write those songs in the 60s, for Dionne Warwick and those kind of plaintive sort of songs. And Can't Stop the Rain is along those lines. And it's a pop song really, and it just says, however good things get, some days are going to be rainy.
Right. No, great message. It's interesting. In the beginning of the interview, I did bring up one of my favorite songs, Perpetual Change, and I was thinking of it. I forgot the lyrics, and I've been thinking about it over the last half hour or so, and I remember parts of the lyrics, but it was the music. But you mentioned boy, it's really true today. That song had made some predictions, and then it dawned on me what you were saying. So, what about can you give us an introduction, maybe the motivation of that song, the thoughts of that song, your feelings about it?
Well, it's ironic that it relates to Yes in a way, and the perpetual changing of members. I mean, of course, originally the song wasn't actually about that,
right?
But it's just kind of a little prophetic, really. That
I got you.
Yeah,
yeah.
We had a song that far back, in 1970, proclaiming, and of course it was a broader view of the world and mankind changing, really, the perpetual change. It was in the lyric of that song. So.
Mm-hmm. Chris, when you're performing live, which songs are the most challenging to do live on stage? Are there particular songs that just takes a little bit more effort?
Well, I mean, there have been some of the more complicated Yes pieces. For instance, Gates of Delirium from Relay. In fact, anything from Relay.
Relay,
it's
yeah,
kind of complicated. But it's the same with anything, really. Is once if you decide you want to go ahead and do a song, you go into rehearsals and I see what you can remember and what you can't. You look, check back, and say, "Oh, okay, that's what I played. That's what I did." And then you have to re-knit the thing together in your brain. If there's a vocal harmony part, you have to come across, and at the same time that there's the bass is playing. Sometimes that's tricky. In fact, on our new album, Fly From Here, there's one part in it, the part 3 of Fly From Here Suite. It involves a part where I have to sing in 5/4 and play bass in 4/4 at the same time. So it's not easy to do off the bat.
Yeah.
But like anything, if once you've done it long enough and the brain accepts what it has to do, it becomes possible.
That's very interesting insight, because you always wonder what's going through your mind on stage when you're performing these songs and which one is, okay, let's get ready. It's like in my business, if you have a challenging guest or a complicated subject to deal with, you got to get ready for it,
Yeah.
And that's really interesting. The couple more songs from Squacket, which is what we're talking about also, the project between, if you're just tuning in, Chris Squire, Steve Hackett, Tall Ships, and Divided Self.
Yeah.
Talk about those songs, because we're going to roll them. Love to hear your inspiration, thoughts, anything.
Well, Tall Ships is an interesting one. That's one of the tracks that we put together in the studio with Roger King and myself and Steve, and it's sort of actually I was beta testing, I've been given a Yamaha bass by the representative in London of Yamaha marketing, and he wanted me to give it a trial run and see if I liked it. And so I just brought it along to the studio and was just screwing around with it, really, and just playing a couple of bass riffs. And Roger just was there too, and he recorded me screwing around. And then the next day when I came in the studio, he said, "Oh, look, that thing you were doing yesterday on the bass, I've put it together in the computer and looped the riff and and then Steve and I came up with this chorus idea, and it's this Tall Ships thing, and so that's the way this song came about. And then we all decided that we liked the feel of it, and then we got together and wrote the vocal lines and lyrics too. We did that all together, really, and so it was a very much an organic Squacket song.
Very interesting.
And yeah, and then as regards Divided Self, that was a song that Steve had brought in. That was one of the early things that I'd gone to his studio to play bass on for him, not even knowing it was going to end up on the Squacket project. And so, I played bass on that, and then did harmonies, and then it just developed into what the finished product is now, really.
And one more song that it's perfect for this time of the year. It's called The Summer Backwards.
Yeah.
And we were talking earlier about having the essence of a Simon and Garfunkel sound here and there, and other great artists. Yeah. This one is one of the ones that has that kind of sound.
Yeah, in fact, it probably has got a Beach Boys edge to it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, especially as the summer's in the title, has to be a Beach Boy reference there, so.
Why not?
I don't quite know how it got that flavor. Once again, I think Steve had brought that song in, but I think we wrote the chorus together, and and then the chorus took on very much this Beach Boys kind of vocal approach, and we went for that.
Yeah, it just feels good. And this is I think we'll end on this, because this to me is one of the interesting things as I talk to some of the great artists, and we've had John Anderson on, we've had everyone from AC/DC to Ted Nugent, and over the 30 years I spoke to a lot of great artists, and when they look back at how things have changed in distributing music, in radio. We talked about earlier in the interview about the early days of progressive rock radio and where we are today. Talk about the changes for marketing your music and also for airplay, and how important is airplay in this day and age of MP3 downloads?
Well, okay, I think airplay is always valuable because, of course, it gets the music out there, but of course that used to be the only route, really. As we know, in this internet world we live in today, there are going to be many people, especially when the Squacket album is released, who will be trying to put it up on sites and and sell it for free, so I don't quite know what the motivation is for people to want to do that, but of course there are many ways to. But at the same time that's going on, they are actually getting the music out there for people to hear. So maybe it just balances itself out at the end of the day, and it gets more exposure probably.
Right, and the fact that people still want to consume and hear the music and love the music and want the music, that's something that continues to be so strong, whether it is
and hopefully if they like it enough, they'll go out and buy the official package with the official cover, which is actually real good for this sleeve. You probably don't have it yet.
Well, actually, I don't have the. I have the advanced release here. That's just a plain white jacket on CD.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I'll tell you something. If you really want to hear this sound, you got to get the highest quality you can get. Get it on CD is my recommendation, because it's just a better file than MP3. You use waves, and so in this kind of music, every bit of essence, every bit of that high end and the clarity is so important.
Yeah, and there's also a vinyl edition as well.
Yeah. All right. And is there a website for the band Squacket?
Is there a website for Squacket? There should be, shouldn't there?
Well, I'll find out by the time this.
I'm not sure that there is just yet, but there definitely should be. So. I'm going to work on that. Thank you for the tip.
Well, you're very well. Hey, listen, Chris Squire, thank you for being on the Allan Handelman Show. Remember my name. Looking forward to meeting you on the road and talking to you down the line.
Okay, Alan. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.